Hi, everyone. Great episode today. And that's because every marketer needs great content. And my guest today, Melissa Zehner, and I talk about it. Melissa is the director of content at Foundation and an expert on the subject, in part because she has lived every part of the process from freelancer to copywriter to editor to now director and leader. One of my favorite parts of our discussion is talking about how to hire writers and also what makes a great writer for B2B content. I think you'll find it interesting. But Melissa and I touch on a lot more, such as building a content marketing strategy, the notion of writing for Google, advancing in a career in writing, and then also Melissa drops about a dozen best practice nuggets for content that I had not heard before. So thanks for listening. Hi Melissa, how are you?
I'm well today. How are you, John?
I'm doing great. So we're not here to talk about coding, but in the coding world, there's this holy war around tabs versus spaces. I don't know if you've seen the episode of Silicon Valley that really makes fun of that. In the editorial world, where do you stand on one space or two spaces between sentences? And are there any kind of editorial pet peeves or hills that you die on?
It has to be one space after a period. I am firmly in that camp. That is a hill I will die on. The two spaces after a period was something that was came about during the days when we were all using typewriters. Now that we have moved to a completely different machine, it's no longer necessary. So, firmly in the one space after a period camp. And I'm going to add another hill that I will also die on, which is Oxford comma or death.
Okay. Right on. Well, I I didn't start learning to type on a typewriter, but I will say that that whenever I started, I was either told to do two spaces or whatever, and I have a really hard time stopping stopping. So I have to set up my like word autocorrect thing to stop myself. Melissa, your background, you've done everything in terms of content. You've been a writer, editor, now you're a leader. And I know we're going to get deep into content marketing strategies, but if you were to pick one adjective, I feel like a lot of my questions are going to be grammar related today. But you could if there's one adjective you would pick to describe the best content marketing strategies, what would it be and why?
Deliberate. I
Hmm.
think many organizations treat content as an afterthought. There's a go to market strategy, a really strong paid program, and oftentimes people create content and then say, okay, how do we fit this into what's already going on, right?
Hmm.
And it's never going to generate the same level of quality results that it would if it was integrated from the beginning. So I think just starting there from the beginning and including content from the get go is going to naturally give you a much stronger strategy, right? Don't create it as an afterthought. Along the same lines, content strategy, just like any other marketing channel strategy, needs to directly align with and support the broader marketing organization's goals, right? So I also think it's important to start there and reverse engineer content that's going to help you meet those goals versus, once again, just creating something and saying, great, how do we fit this in? Where does it go?
So that makes a lot of sense to me. What are the building blocks of a content marketing strategy? Um, you're meeting with a client for the first time, or you're thinking about it for your own brand. You're going to execute a content marketing strategy. Like what kind of planning needs to be done in advance? If you kind of know what I mean.
Yeah, first and foremost, audience research. Who are you talking to? What makes them tick? What gets them excited? What frustrates them? What problems can you solve for them? Understanding your audience and your ideal customer is always going to be key, right? Because the whole point of content, if it's performing well, is getting that engagement. And you can't engage someone if you don't know what they're all about, right? So that's always the first place to start. I think research is always really crucial. A lot of people aren't doing research, they're just spinning out content to check the box, right?
Hmm.
Taking the time to see what competitors are doing or not doing, what people are searching for, what they're complaining about is great. That helps you figure out every piece of content that you need to be creating, whether it's a blog post, an email, even a tweet, right? That's how you really start getting people interested and having a conversation with you versus you just sort of speaking to them.
How that you talked about some parts of the research where you're looking at what people are searching for at Google and what competitors are doing. Do you think at all about trying to like create an emotional connection? And I think Melissa, we're going to talk a lot about B2B content. Um, is it weird to think of that for a B2B audience, like an emotional connection, because we're like here to talk business, or you know what I mean?
I know what you mean, and the answer is not at all. Even in B2B, we're still talking to people, right? A business is just a bunch of people
Mm-hmm.
with a common goal. It's still a person that is the decision maker. It's a person that is deciding to buy, click, subscribe, whatever that action is that they're taking, right? And so there's this misconception in B2B that everyone needs to be very professional and very stuffy and very conservative because we have this view in our heads that that's what the business world is like. And
Mm-hmm.
there are segments of the business world that are like that, sure, but we're all still people, right? And so being able to create an authentic human experience is going to take you much farther with your content than anything that seems as professional as possible, right? Um, just like B2C, if you can engage people on an emotional level, you're going to have their attention.
Yeah, I can see that. Um, is so I want to dive a little bit deeper into the notion of being stuffy. Like I really enjoy reading things that feel conversational to me. I mean, Malcolm Gladwell, what he writes, just like everything rolls off his tongue or his pen like perfectly. It just feels so right to read, at least to me. But sometimes I read B2B content and the tone and style is trying to communicate to me like on a personal conversational level, but doesn't really feel authentic. So, um, how do you think about that level of authenticity, tone, style? How does a brand figure that out?
I think you have to start with your audience. We talked a little bit earlier about understanding them, right? What makes them tick? What are they frustrated by? Where are they hanging out online? The other thing that's really easy to glean from that research up front is how they're talking. And if you can replicate that and talk to them in a way that they're comfortable with, then you're going to stand a better chance of creating engaging content or content that they're going to notice, right? So if your audience is very casual, you probably need to be very casual. If your audience is short on time and very efficient in sending 5 word tweets and that's how they like to talk, that's how you should probably be talking as well. So, I majored in social science in school. So, in social science, they talk about this concept of mirroring,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, that's how we oftentimes make other people more comfortable. You're watching someone else talk and you're nodding, you're saying, you're giving them that constant feedback, right? So you can take this concept of mirroring and apply it in content marketing and start mirroring your audience a little bit better so that they feel like your brand is a really good fit and they feel comfortable having a conversation with you.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. So we've gotten to know our audience a little bit, and we have the background research, and we've developed this tone and style for for let's say a typical client of yours. Maybe there's no such thing as a typical client, but how do you break down the types of content you need? Like imagine you're in a kickoff meeting or a brainstorm meeting with someone new, a new client, or someone on your team that you're mentoring. What are the elements of a content marketing strategy at that point?
It's going to vary based on what the rest of their marketing strategy looks like, right? So, for a company that is very product led, the content may need to reflect that.
Mm,
So, are we looking at features or solutions that the company offers that directly solve the problems that people are having, right? Think of comparison pages on a website or a technical support page that would tell you exactly how to do something step by step on a software as you're onboarding. So that's an option. Then you have companies that are very focused on being a lifestyle brand. Think something like Nike or Apple, right? It becomes really integrated into almost every aspect of someone's life. So then you're going to be producing pieces of content that are much more focused on that emotional element, making someone feel like they're part of a community, making them feel like you get them, right? So I think, again, it really depends on the larger strategy that's at play there and how content marketing fits into it and integrates with it really well. So, unfortunately, like many things in marketing, the right answer is it
Depends.
depends.
Yeah.
Yes, because there's no one right answer for every client, you know. I built my career in content marketing and for a long time focused really heavily on organic, but I oftentimes have sat in meetings with clients the past few years and listened to them talk and said, I don't think that organic is a really good starting place for you, right? I think you should start with email marketing, or I think you should do some paid landing pages first and, work your way into it. So if you're being really thoughtful about your job, it's much more about what is a good fit for the client in that moment versus just sort of pushing a model that you're used to onto them, right?
Yeah, that's true. And you mentioned the term organic, so I wanna kind of click into that a little bit. And you and I have joked off camera about the concept of writing for Google. Google's going to be the source of so much for any business, and there's almost like this playbook, if you will, for how you how you write in the hopes that Google will like what you say, but Google's a robot. You're writing for you know what I mean. So Melissa, break down for me the how you should consider Google as part of the equation of content marketing.
That's a great question. I actually had to correct a writer this week who kept writing the phrase "the Google bot thinks," and I kept commenting on this document saying, "Does the Google bot think? Is it thinking right now?" But we are so used to that, right? And especially in content marketing, there is this idea of somehow having to pray to the Google gods to get the results that you're looking for. Um, you can't overlook SEO. I think if you're going to be successful in content marketing from an organic standpoint, you absolutely still need to be following SEO best practices. In my opinion, the people that say just write good content and it'll rank are being a little blasé and possibly a little naive about it at
Mm-hmm.
this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
There are people publishing millions of new pieces of content. What is it, every minute? That's a lot of competition that's out there in the world, right? So you do have to be thoughtful about it. I don't, however, think you should write first and foremost for Google. I oftentimes advise writers to think of it in terms of a check-in process. So you want to be very well versed in how the algorithm works, the factors that Google uses to decide how it's going to rank a piece of content, right? What good page experience looks like. And you want to have that in the back of your head as you're creating a piece of copy, right? And there should be these moments in time where you stop and you do this little check-in, right? We know that Google likes keywords and subheads. We know that Google likes you to present information in a question and answer format. We know that Google likes you to break things up into bulleted lists or easier to digest information. We know that Google really likes it if you have multimedia that also corresponds with the topic you're talking about. So if you happen to have a short video that ties in, embed that in the post, right? But it should be something that really is just sort of there as an undertone in the back of your mind while you're creating a piece of content. And periodically do that check-in. And if you can ask yourself, is what I'm doing right now hurting or helping SEO? If you say no, it's probably helping, then you're going the right direction, right? If you can ask yourself some of those questions and you know that you're not doing any of those things as you're crafting the piece, then no, it's probably not going to rank that well, right?
Yeah, I feel like writing that really draws you in and captivates you is a bit of a lost art. And whereas in the old days, I have that in quotes. In the old days, like writing and the use of words and everything was maybe the most important skill in marketing. now getting to be a CMO or advancing in marketing, some folks might look at analytics or paid search experience or whatever. Um, I want to ask you about that, but let me actually wind back for a sec. How do you actually hire a writer? Because I feel like I when I see good writing, I kind of know what it is, but I don't know if I know how to interview for it.
That's a wonderful question. I hire writers very discerningly, first and foremost. I ask a lot of questions. You really have to get past the portfolio and into the character of the person. So, one of my favorite questions to ask is whether someone reads.
Hmm.
In my experience, a lot of aspiring writers spend a lot of time cranking out content, which is great. We all need a portfolio. We all need to practice the craft, but they're not actually reading. And so there are things you can learn by reading someone else's work that you're not going to learn by just writing, right? And it doesn't have to be an industry pub. It doesn't even have to be a marketing book. Having built a career in content, oftentimes I'm reading poetry or a novel, and the author has done something really clever. And I have this moment where you step out of the story for a minute and say, "Oh, I see what you did there. That was really genius," right? Or someone uses a really great turn of phrase that just captures a moment. You know, I on a personal note, I love F. Scott Fitzgerald because if you read The Great Gatsby, there are parts where he describes those summer days so well, you can almost
Hmm.
smell it, right? That's the art, that's the craft of writing. So someone who's actively reading is typically going to be a better writer. I also look for a level of curiosity. Marketing is always changing. Even if someone is just a copywriter, there are different clients, different industries, they're releasing different products, it's evolving. And so, uh, research and learning is a really integral part of the writing process. It's always going to be that way. So, if someone isn't curious and doesn't naturally enjoy that learning process, they're probably not going to excel as a writer. I think being able to detach from the work is very important. Writing in a professional setting is hard. You're signing up to get feedback all day, every day. And there's writing for pleasure and writing for yourself, and there's learning to write for your audience, which is not about you, right? And so you have to detach yourself from that process a little bit. And in a setting where you're writing for clients, you also have to write for them and what's going to help them meet their goals. So being able to remove the ego from that is going to produce a better result, right? Maybe you don't like it, maybe it's not your personal style, but if it ties in perfectly with a client's brand and tone and voice, and it's really on track to help them meet their goals, that's a successful piece of content, right? That's what we would call a great piece of content. Final thing I think I would say is someone who is well versed or interested in being well versed in skills that are complementary or adjacent to copywriting. So, someone who is learning about SEO, UX, reader comprehension, branding, even if they're not actively having to write about these things, it's going to give them a stronger understanding of what high caliber content looks like.
I love that answer. I have like a million follow-ups. I was really wondering if you were going to use the term curiosity because I feel like in B2B in particular, like if you were going to write for my company Centerfield, there's a certain level of understanding of digital marketing or certain parts of technology. You kind of need to know the jargon and how words are used and context about where the industry has come to really connect with with the audience. And yeah, it does make a lot of sense to me that someone who would, even if they're not passionate about marketing technology, appreciate the process of learning something new and how to put it into words. Um, I wonder. This question kind of just came to me, but I wonder how, as a writer, a full time writer, you recharge or take breaks. I know for me, whether I'm writing for myself or whether I'm writing something for other folks at Centerfield or whatever. I write for 2 hours. I am exhausted, and maybe that's just me and how I use my brain in other ways. But as a writer, how do you keep things going day in and day out?
It can be tough. I freelanced for quite a while before I got my first full-time copywriting job. And because I was freelancing, it was very intermittent work, right? Which is easier to get through. And then suddenly I'm sitting in an agency and I've got 40 hours plus of writing to get through every week, all day, every day. And in that environment, you don't have the luxury of having writer's block and staring at that cursor for a while. You don't have the luxury of saying, I'll walk the dog and I'll come back to it later. There are these really stringent timelines, and you just have to get the work written, right? And you just have to squeeze it out. Where does it come from? I'm not sure I have a complete answer for you, but I will say for me, I if I was feeling drained or burned out or like I was just tapped out and didn't have any more creative ideas, that's when I would try to shift gears and move into research mode for one. That's when you take a break, right? Start looking up stats and data, start reading up on this topic so you can become more of a subject matter expert. Can you reach out to someone in the industry and schedule an interview and ask them a few questions? And sometimes that conversation will give you a lot of
Mm.
ideas, right? So you're still doing the work, but you're giving your brain a chance to sort of process, right? I think that's why writing is so exhausting because you're taking a specific topic and you're trying to distill it from every possible angle, right? Have I answered all of the right questions? Have I covered it in a way that makes sense? Am I also sounding really smart while I'm saying it? Because that's just a natural human concern, right? And then you're also thinking about SEO and reader comprehension and all of these other things. You have a deep thought in the middle of it where you're wondering if your editor is going to hate that line or not, right? And that's why it's so exhausting is because your brain is on overdrive. And so sometimes I feel like you need to give your brain a little time to sort of process all of that and catch up and make sense of it, right? Think of it like sleeping. Like we go to bed every night, and while we're doing that, that's when our brain organizes everything we learned that day, and that's when it puts memories into different files, right? That's when it actually updates your muscle memory about different skills. So it's kind of the same thing for a writer. Like you're going to go through different phases and you're going to feel different ways. You cannot just be writing nonstop 40 hours a week. I don't know anyone who can successfully do it. There's naturally going to be an ebb and
Mm.
flow. I will say, however, there's a caveat that I want to add in. There are a lot of people that complain that they're not successful in copywriting, but they're the same people that say, I had writer's block, I need an extension, I didn't hit the deadline, I just wasn't inspired by this topic. I've had writers tell me they didn't want work because they didn't think the topic was fun. If you're trying to build your career as a copywriter, you also have to treat it like a job, right? And you have to hit that deadline. There was this quote that was really famous back in the day,
Hmm.
also in quotations. Someone asked a Somerset mom how he managed to never get writer's block. And he said, I'm lucky the muse shows up every morning at 9 a.m. because when you're being paid for it and your rent depends on it, right? It's a different level of inspiration and motivation.
That's funny. Um,
Yeah.
so Melissa, your story is really, really interesting. You mentioned starting as a freelancer. Now you're leading a team. You're leading a company effort. I'd love I'd love for you to share your story, but then also answer the question or talk about what are the natural ways to advance as a writer, whether it's into other parts of marketing or becoming a marketing leader.
One, I think you have to know it's possible. I see a lot of conversation on social media these days, and I have a lot of writers reach out to me who say it's impossible to be a six-figure copywriter. You see all these success gurus on LinkedIn, and everyone thinks they're full of it. And I'm sure some of them are, I have no doubt. But it is possible. I know several six-figure copywriters who are doing just that, and they haven't even advanced, at least title-wise, up that marketing chain, right? They're excellent at what they do. I talked about that curiosity. So if you're a writer, and especially if you want to succeed in the marketing world, you need to have that understanding that is going to help you not only succeed in the role that you're in, but in terms of being a member of a team, in supporting the rest of the department in your interactions, even with other team members. So Understanding SEO is always going to help the content rank, but it's also going to help you have an effective conversation with your SEO manager, right? And get that guidance that you need. Understanding UX will help you know how to cap off an article maybe and suggest that someone include a CTA, right? Reader comprehension is crucial. There are a lot of people that are wonderful, wonderful writers, but they don't necessarily understand the elements of how reader comprehension keeps someone engaged in a piece and how that level of stickiness can help, especially in a digital environment. So the eye has a hard time reading a serif font versus a sans serif font. Anything that is actually too stark black and white, the contrast exhausts the eye. How many characters you have across in body copy. It shouldn't be more than 75 if you're on desktop. Most websites are going to have 80, 85, 90. These are little things that if you understand and you can start weighing in on those conversations are going to not only elevate how you're looking at the work, but also how you're building relationships in the department, right? A lot of things that I learned were just because I was impatient. I was a copywriter. I was paid to sit in the corner, write copy, that's it. And sometimes I would go to a dev and say, hey, I've noticed XYZ isn't working on this page. Can you fix it? And someone would say, submit a ticket, right? Well, eventually you don't want to do that. So I just started figuring it out myself. Great, I'm going to look up HTML and I'm going to start studying up on WordPress and I'm going to learn how to do these front end changes myself. And then I don't have to wait on dev, right? It was the same thing with SEO. I didn't start out learning SEO, but I was writing and no one was reading my stuff. And I really wanted my stuff to get written. So I started learning SEO so that more people would actually find and read the content, right? So I think this curiosity is key. And I think it will take you very, very far. I have sat in every position on a content marketing team. I was junior copywriter, then senior copywriter, then editor, then strategist, then manager, now director, right? So it absolutely can be done. I want people to know that it's possible, but you have to have the curiosity and the drive to be really smart about it the same way that you would any other career, right? Even a salesperson doesn't just know sales. So if you're a copywriter, you can't just know copywriting. You have to be really smart about all of these other things you can learn that can complement your skills and elevate the quality of the work that you're producing.
That's an amazing answer. And the question I was going to ask, I think, is sounding really elementary right now. I was going to sort of break down content marketing into like these metrics, which I had thought of as volume, distribution, and conversion. And then you're giving me like these PhD level number of characters on a desktop screen, and I'm feeling like maybe I'm not knowing what some of the key metrics or KPIs are for content writing. Maybe you can break down to me how you approach looking at success for a content marketing execution.
Well, there's always going to be the qualitative and the quantitative, right? So I want to highlight that quality is always key there. You have to have that piece first and foremost, which means you need to have a successful strategy. You have to be really deliberate about how you're approaching content. You need to have a talented copywriter. You probably need to have a talented designer as well because we're creating for a digital environment,
Mm-hmm.
right? You are going to think of all of those things as the ingredients that are going to help you produce a really wonderful piece of content, right? That's just the starting point, though. Once you're done with that piece of content, how are you distributing it? How is it part of a larger marketing strategy? Is it fitting within a funnel or a buyer's journey that's going to get someone from point A to B to C until they're ready to buy? How does it fit into the larger picture, right? So that's really important as well. The metrics are also really important and something that I think more people need to pay attention to, especially in content marketing. Metrics are everywhere in a lot of other marketing channels, and it's amazing how many places start off really strong with a paid program and then start doing content marketing, but tell you that they don't have tracking and attribution in place for their content marketing program. I've been hearing that for 10 years, right? You can set up tracking and attribution for organic just like you can for paid, and you can know exactly how much revenue it's bringing in. So I think that's really important if we're talking in terms again of content marketers that want to advance their careers. Just like the paid team is doing, you need to be able to tie your work to leads and revenue. And when you can successfully do that, you've proven your value, right? So it's also really important to think about those logical next steps along the chain as well, so that you are the full package, right? That's a successful piece of content. It's something that's quality, it's thoughtful, someone enjoys reading it, but also it's getting you the results that are really going to make a difference for your client or for your company. I don't know how articulate that was.
Very. And
I feel like I circled around before I drove it home, you know?
Melissa, thank you so much. My last question will be, if folks listening want to learn more about what Foundation does or what you do, where should they go next?
They can visit us at foundationinc.co. Foundation also has a Twitter handle, which I believe is at Foundation Inc. I'll check on that later and double check. Our CEO, Ross, is also incredibly active on Twitter, and his Twitter handle is the coolest cool, which tells you right there what you're getting into once you give him a follow. And we do share a lot about every aspect of content marketing, both qualitative and quantitative. And in my opinion, we are doing some things that not any of the other content marketing agencies are doing out there. So I definitely encourage people to check it
Thanks
out.
so much.
Thank you.